So I'm pretty excited here. I met Kyle a while ago, actually, now, but I think you just moved back at the time, perhaps even. Not 100% sure. Maybe you can clarify that for me. But really happy to have you here, Kyle, and going to be talking about Kyle's time with the ATO and their story in terms of agility at scale and the things that the journey they've gone on, the things that have worked well, the things that haven't worked as well, some of those lessons learned from the experiments, and what they may have done that's been quite unique for the ATO as well. So thank you, Kyle, for joining us, and yeah, I'll hand over to you to sort of take the reins from here.
You're welcome, and thank you for having me, Jason. I've been looking forward to joining this meetup and speaking to you all. So I appreciate everyone's time. I'll just share. Are you able to
Yeah, yeah,
hit the button and I'll share the screen?
all yours.
Thank you. Cool. Excellent. So can everyone see the screen all right?
Yep, perfect.
Excellent.
It's not on presentation mode though. Just out of it, just in case. Yep, there you go.
There we go. Thank you. Yeah, so everyone, welcome. Kyle Hand, currently working for the Australian Tax Office. And I've whipped this deck up to speak about those points which Jason covered. It's really interesting when since I joined the ATO, there's, I guess, just to bring some context to it, there's about 22,000 or 22,500 people employed by the ATO. Obviously, it's one of those types of organisations that touches the Australian public and pretty much all of us. Whether people are working or they're not working, you would normally have some sort of contact point with the ATO. And since joining, something I've really admired about the org is they take that responsibility very seriously. And over, I think, the last 10 years, they've undergone to more from traditional waterfall and project management to more product focused, human-centered design, HCD, and shifting the org to work in a way that's more agile and responsive. So I'm currently working as a part of a department called EST, where there's about 2,500 people distributed across Australia. When we look at the stats behind that, it's actually distributed pretty evenly between the states, other than Perth. About 80% of the projects or the pieces of work have been moving towards agile ways of working within the EST. We currently have 13 release trains, and it's about 64 agile teams. And we've made somewhere around 350 applications in the period since EST has been formed. And probably one of the biggest impacts it's related to, we've collected about 33 in the past 12 months, financial year, about 33 million lodgements. With this next slide, this is the Agile HQ team. So it's really interesting. Agile HQ, I guess, grew out of LAIS, a lean agile center of excellence, and the team had run as a LACE for, I think, about 12 months or a year and a half. And then they shifted more towards Agile HQ, which is the headquarters for the ways of working. We currently partnered with another team that works more in the migration space. So we're currently speaking whether to that actually makes sense anymore, and the way that Agile HQ is heading. And I think about a few months ago, anyway, we had advertised for some vacancies that had opened up, and I think there was something like 18 applications or something like that come in, which were apparently really high quality. So this is our transformation journey. The ATO went from waterfall, or started moving from waterfall to agile ways of working around 2013. So a 10-year journey this far. They started with a one branch pilot, where they, I guess, created, the program increments, and spooled up some release trains, and got the department working in a specific cadence, trying to line that work up together. Then they scaled from 1 to 13 arts within another 12 months. Between 2016 and 2017, and then in 2018, Agile HQ come up with the ATO scaled Agile method, which we call ATOSA, which is it's similar to SAFe, but contextualized to the way of working within the ATO. So I found that a really interesting framework. 2019, I think, when Agile HQ formally solidified and got approved by the ATO. And now all the Agile coaches sit within Agile HQ. Currently, or from 2020 to now, Agile HQ have been uplifting different areas, running a lot of maturity assessments, and trying to, I guess, get one department at a time up to some level of Agile sustainability. What we've noticed, though, which is really interesting, obviously, there's 4 coaches to 2,500 people, so we can say that we're spread pretty thin, and to make an impact that is able to get a team or a department up to sustainability, we've got to think about ways of scaling our coaching approach as well. In the process, or I'm in the process now of actually running some use cases where we've had permanent Agile coaches in departments who have now, they left or gone to a different government org or something like that, and they're no longer in the departments. And we're seeing this decline in the Agile maturity. So I've been running a lot of maturity assessments and building up these use cases. And I want to go back to the executives and the commissioner and say, hey, maybe we need to rethink this strategy. And one of the things I would be speaking to is that we look at a way of having more permanent coaches embedded in particular areas. In saying that, we do have Scrum Masters and we do have release train engineers. So in an ideal world, I guess they can cover that role, but we're still finding that there's a need for an Agile coach. The question in my mind is whether, how many release trains or how many departments could we have one, coach for 150 people or, 300 people, just to keep that bit of experience there. And I think as we keep collecting these metrics and experimenting with a few things, we'll soon work that out.
Are you using? Do you mind if we ask questions
Go
as you
go
go?
go for it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Are you using the scaled agile maturity assessments, or are you modifying them?
So that's a interesting. We're using, I think, one of the ones that had most recently been used, and that period of time is probably the last 3 to 4 years. And the one that I've used to run back through these teams was a modified version, I believe, of the scaled agile maturity assessment.
Yeah.
What is really interesting, though, we've literally um, just had cyber approve X amount of licenses for Agile Health Radar.
Hmm.
So we're starting to roll that out, and that is going to become the new form of maturity assessment.
Cool.
I think one thing to be caution of there, and I had highlighted this, just from working with other organizations, it's great to have a maturity assessment and go out and do that assessment and understand, where teams or a department sit, but it's not a silver bullet. We still need coaches, we still need the scrum masters, we still need the RTEs to help lift up that capability. Um, and I'll be interested to see how Agile HR Health Radar fits into this picture, because that's more of a complete solution.
Yeah.
So it does the assessment, but then it also has, if you want to get from a stage 2 to 3, it has a whole suite of resources and tools and stuff to almost self-coach. Teams can self-coach themselves to get to those next stages. My assumption, which I hope I can be proven wrong, but my assumption is that it still won't be a silver bullet, that we're still going to need some level of Agile HQ influence in there to help with
Mm.
that uplift. Does anyone else have any questions?
Yes, Carl, this is Payal. So, what do you measure when you measure the maturity of your teams?
So it's pretty, some of the things we speak to are mindset, culture, um, agile practices with the events. There's some too as well to scaled agile, speaking to release trains and um, system demos and things like that. And then this maturity assessment, which is different than the ones I've used at other organizations, we drill fairly deep into the technical side of things as well, and talk about architecture and engineering, which I thought was an interesting fit. But we are dealing with a lot of tech teams, so that makes sense for them.
Absolutely. Thanks,
There's
Carl.
some there's
Yeah.
some free resources. I guess if you wanted to see what the scaled agile out of the box solution is for this maturity assessment, I can include the links in a summary afterwards if you like.
Yeah, sure, that would be great. Thanks, Jason.
Cool.
Thank you.
Just out of interest, how's it the assessment conducted?
So the way that I've been doing it has been going in, working with the full team, and literally speaking to every question. So on the maturity assessment, there's 5 stages, with a little blurb explaining what that stage is. Stage 1 either being non-existent or a paragraph that is super basic. Stage 5 really being that illustrious state that if any agile team that could get to it would be exceptional. And then I speak to each one of the stages on each one of the items, answer questions, speak to the team, see where they're at. Are they doing the practice? How do they feel about this? And then just using the chat in the in Teams, everyone, drop in a vote. If we don't come to a consensus, I'll get people to speak to, the highest, the lowest, and we'll keep, talking to the points and re-voting until we come to a consensus.
Oh, cool. So the teams kind of decide where they're at.
Yeah, the teams decide where they're at. And that it's actually a good point, Sammy, because one of the most powerful things for me of a maturity assessment when it's done that way is actually being able to speak to the team about the different levels, particularly if there's people who are newer to Agile. It's a great conversation. And then they can logically see, between stage 1 and 2 or 2 and 3, maybe some differences that they can improve on.
Cool, thanks.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Hi, Carla. I've got a question, if I may.
Yep.
Just thinking about this wonderful journey that you've been on, you can see how there's a lot of learning in that and there's a lot of growth in that. And I'm just wondering, from a value delivery perspective, have you tracked how the adoption of agile ways of working has improved on the core deliverables from a business perspective? And I know this is the government agency, but the equivalent of.
Yep. Yeah, that's a really good question. There's been a change of leadership and a change of team structure, and I think over the last probably since 2019, when Agile HQ was fully embedded, that things have changed up a bit. So I haven't found any consistent org-wide metric that's been captured, but there are pockets. So there's pockets being departments or multiple departments that are well on their agile journey and quite sustainable, and they seem to be delivering a lot of value and meeting the business objectives. And then there's other departments that are still probably predominantly working waterfall and reporting different types of metrics as well. So that's one thing that I guess the strategy behind the rollout of Agile Health Radar is to get that full, high level understanding exactly of the Agile maturity for every single team within EST. And from there, start to track back to some of those metrics. And an interesting point around that as well, there's still different workflow management systems that are being used. It's not just one suite across EST. I think each department has essentially had its freedom to choose its own tooling, which is doesn't help to line up some of the reporting.
Yeah, for sure. So I applied for my tax ID about 9 days ago because I've recently landed from the UK.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just hoping that in 2023, it takes a lot less to get your tax ID than it was in 2013, thanks to what you guys are doing.
Yeah.
I'm certainly hoping so.
Well, I think that's the plan. But good feedback.
Interesting use case.
Yeah.
Just one more question from me, if you don't mind. 13 release trains, are they? There are a number of solutions that sort of suggest that each release train has lots of different solutions to cater for. But are they essentially a release train based around a value stream and therefore a particular type of product? or some form of service, or what do the arts serve?
It's more so at the moment on a function basis,
Yeah.
which is another thing that I would like to do, is go back through and map out the value streams based on product delivery.
Mm.
As we're having it with the way it currently is in a majority of the departments, being function based, it can still feel a bit siloed, or quite siloed, and then there's still a lot of dependencies on other departments, or even across the department on other teams. Good question, Jason.
Yeah, 2.0, huh?
Yeah. And we are actually, one of the higher priority items that's in the strategy and objective backlog is creating a TOSA, ATO scaled Agile framework 2.0.
Mm-hmm.
Which one thing I've actually been pushing for is that it probably needs to be simplified as well. And I think come back, focus on the value streams, focus on ground level up, agile maturity, and keep it simple.
Awesome. Yeah.
Keep it less.
Yeah. More or less.
More or less.
Yeah.
So if I jump onto this next slide, so I guess some of the key things that we are, really focusing on now, increasing adoption. One of the things across the program of work, teams, departments, value streams had the option. They had a lot of options. Agile wasn't going to be forced on them. We do have this framework of operating, ATO scaled Agile, but they were allowed to pick and choose, what they done, how they wanted to work, what made sense to their teams. So we're hoping to bring some more alignment with that, and I think help guide teams more towards the one method, the one framework, and that being a TOSA. So the vision is to help continue to focus on increasing adoption, keep defining organizational integration, and to better understand how the corporate or Agile can integrate with corporate investment process, government change management, and things like that. We're always focused on improving business value, and that's also customer value for the stakeholders, and helping other more departments and teams make a positive transition to Agile. As you probably experienced in organizations that have been on a transformation journey for a while, people can start to get a certain level of change fatigue, especially in federal government, where processes can take a long time. We tend to see it's about a 2.5 year, 3 year turnaround time to get something approved. So we've just brought on Mural, and I think that was a 2.5 year process. By the time we decided we wanted to do it, you start filling out the applications and it goes through all the things, and it was finally approved about 2.5 years time. And as you can understand, that can put a bit of unnecessary pressure maybe on different teams and departments. So we're looking at to reduce some of those times and help make that transition more positive. And it definitely a key focus, and I think this will be key to our success moving forward into the future, is focused on you get watertight and focus on the metrics. So adoption and maturity assessment surveys, training and evaluations, and value metrics. So this should be really cool. I touched on this a bit before. So some of the core focuses around the practice, ATOSA, ATO Scale Agile framework, and working with release trains, we found that to be super valuable. We've set a program-wide cadence. So every, whether a team's working agile or not, we still have the PI planning days and lining teams up to make this cross-team, cross-department, roadmap and alignment points. So we want to continue to do that. We've been, we've offered Scrum and Kanban as the two frameworks or methods that at a team level they can work with. We found that this has worked quite well. Probably from a rule of thumb since I've been there, I think it's probably landed somewhere for the majority of the teams in between the two, a Scrum ban sort of flow. People like working in sprints. They get value, in time boxing the work that they're working on. But we bring in more, values of Kanban by limiting WIP, visualizing the work, managing the flow, and that seems to be working as well. And I guess as a overarching umbrella, we even before I had been at the ATO, there had been a focus on, thinking more about that modern agile where we're creating just that agile mindset and behaviors. And that way, whether they're working Scrum, Kanban, Scrum Ban, or, just a more modern agile way of working, that if they have that mindset, that will lead them in the right direction. Is there any questions?
I have a quick question. Sorry. So so we were talking about more, setting the mindset, right? Sorry about my throat. I'm having a throat infection. So how do you, if someone is not agreeing to that mindset, if they're opposing about the whole methodology, how do you convince that person? How do you take the team together?
I think that's a good question, and actually something that I've personally come across quite a lot. I think whether it's probably in most teams, there's always that one person, that one or two people that are, maybe been in the org for a while. And yeah, that's Jason's shaking his head. No way, no way. And that level of resistance. For me, probably my main point is just I enjoy building relationships. If we're going to expect change or want change from whether it's a person, a team, or a department, we need to create a certain level of psychological safety and freedom within that. And for me, we're still face to face. We're still people to people, belly to belly. And, I honestly believe that if I could just build a good enough relationship with whoever I work with, the change is not going to be an issue. And that normally works every time. Along with that, if we can build the psychological safety and relationship, obviously taking small steps and allowing that person to start to see the value. because once they start to see that value, then they, from my experience, then they generally start asking more questions, and then you can give them a little bit more attention and help them. And before you know it, they become your biggest agile evangelist.
How much have you been able to shift to a pull rather than a push-based approach?
Could you repeat that? Sorry? You've got a little bit of background noise. Whoops. Would you be able to repeat?
My apologies. How much have you been able to shift towards a pull-based approach instead of push or quarterly pushing?
Do you mean for the agile adoption?
Yes, and I don't mean for the adoption of agile. I mean for the way work is handled when agile is adopted in the ATO.
Yeah, that's a really good. That's another. These are all really good questions, and I I know I keep saying that. It's interesting. Obviously, in federal government, there's a lot of policies and regulations, and particularly the ATO, integrity and cyber threat or security in general is a really high concern. So there is a lot of red tape and processes that we need to go through. And it's changing. I wasn't there 10 years ago, but my assumption is the way that they're working now is a significant, even, at the executive and leadership level, is a significant difference than it was 10 years ago. But I definitely feel that there's still some, some key actions that we need to do moving forward to help it become more pull-based. One of the things that I've been thinking about quite a lot is we need to have probably more touch points with the senior executives, maybe right even up to the commissioner level, to help them understand more about agile prioritization and limiting WIP and managing the workflow at that strategic level. But this is one of the things that we've been facing. It's 4 to 5 coaches with 2,500 people. What is our highest priority, and what should we focus on next?
Should be fine.
Yeah.
So I've got a story card that might be useful to Pyle. I'm just wondering if that be useful to share, or if that's something we could take offline.
I think definitely happy to open it up.
Yeah. So the subject that Pyle touched on is something really close to my heart, and I really like what you said around relationships, around psychological safety. So we have to role model psychological safety, right? And there's a couple of principles that are really important here that really helped me. First one is the voice of the system. So if somebody is resistant, just assume that they're the voice of the system. So they're saying out loud what other people are thinking, but not saying. So you can assume that. So we always had a situation where there was somebody who was the devil's advocate, and then they have enough, and then they leave, and then all of a sudden somebody else becomes the devil's advocate. It needs to be said. And they're quite happy to sit back while somebody else says it, right? So bear that in mind. And the second thing is to really treat that in a way that actually this is something that the system has to work with. And I'll just give you this is something that happened to me in real life. So I started working with an insurance firm back in the UK, and I arrived and they had a really small coaching team. And it was like, oh, Zach, great to see you here. Really, the first thing that you need to do is you need to work with this, senior exec, and he's got the voice of the ear of the MD, and he really doesn't get it. And I said, okay, so slow it down. Then what do you mean he doesn't get it? It's like, oh, he doesn't get agile. He does not get it at all. And I said, all right, so he does not get it. And they said, no, he does not get it. But you guys get it. And they said, yes, of course we get it. So is he intellectually inferior to you? And they went, no, he's really bright. This guy is like Ivy League. He's got his own yacht and he's made a fortune in the market. And I was like, okay, so now I don't get it. Because what we preach or what we help with people is not brain surgery, right? It's just common sense. So I said, well, how about maybe he's got a point to make and maybe we listen to him. So we had this session with the leadership team and I just said, and I reached out to your point about relationship. I'd reached out to him beforehand and I said, listen, I want to hear your voice and if we can hear it with the leadership team. And I said, right, so I hear you've got reservations. Could you please share that with us? Because I really want to share it with the team. And he said, yeah, no problem. This is one of the biggest priorities for the organization. So it's really crucial that we get it right. We've never done something like this to this scale. We've never done it in an agile way. And I don't think we have the capability, if I look at the number of the capability that we've got in terms of the coaches, etc., to get it and do it right. And I said, I can't disagree with that. Can anybody disagree with that? And I'm like, no, it's got a point. And I said, all right, so what would it take for you to be on board with this? And then we start designing it in a way that he was happy with that. And he became somebody who was really supportive of it. So this is how I like to deal with resistance, is to give it a voice, honor it, and then work with it. I hope this is helpful.
That's excellent. Thanks, Zach. And that actually reminds me of something I learned. I never forget from early on in high school that one of my school teachers said to me, and it always stuck in the back of my mind. And she was talking about bullies, and she said, "Why don't you try and find out what's itching the bully?" And it was that analogy of everyone acts or reacts because of something. And it's not just fair to, not pay attention or just discredit that how they're feeling or what they're going through is not valid because no one else is having that experience. But if we can actually work out what is making that person itch, maybe there's some gems there to find. And that can help the solution as a whole. So that's excellent. Thank you. And actually, that's a really good segue to talk about the next slide. So some of the impacts that we've mapped out, and when we thought about where we're at as an org, where we're at with our Agile adoption and the maturity across departments and teams and trains and solutions and all of those things. We've definitely highlighted the people are at the forefront. What we really want to do is look at creating new roles and pathways to shift accountability and responsibility. And one of those is actually which I'm currently involved in at the moment, is to creating a pathway from graduate programs up to, all through the APSs, APS 4, APS 6, up to the executive level, EL1, EL2, and potentially to a leadership role in the senior executives, and internally breed our product owners, scrum masters, agile coaches, developers on essentially a lifetime career role where they can go, move through the process and remain at the ATO for as long as they want. The next thing was looking at the processes and procedures. As you can imagine, over the years, there's been a huge amount of change in staff and regulation and policies, and there's a huge amount of everything. Like we literally have it all, and we've probably got a lot of it twice or even 3 times. So it's now going back through all the processes and procedures and bringing that down to a single sort of truth. technology, that standardization of the selected tools, of which I was speaking about before. So instead of having, every team has their own system, or every department has their own system, let's try and get it down to as the smallest amount that makes sense. And another high priority, obviously, is culture, and that relates back to that mindset piece, which we spoke about before. I always like to say, with this as well, the mindset and culture, it's a top, or ideally, it's a top-down, bottom-up, left side, right side, or other angles approach. It's very hard leading that transformation if it's just top down. It's very hard leading that transformation if it's the bottom up. But at some level, we want to have those touch points all at the same time from all angles. We're also focused on the people capability. Obviously, with training, we have our own internal training, which Agile HQ currently runs. I'm trying to push that back more to L&D, learning and development, with a subject matter expert from Agile HQ, because I'm finding, if we're running full day, training and workshops, it's hard to scale our time. And when you start taking, 8 hours out, or, 2 days out at a time, and maybe have co-facilitation, that's a whole lot of capacity. But we understand that, helping people uplift their capability, whether it's within Agile or, other areas of their capability, is super important. And this, honestly, I've really impressed at the ATO just how open they are to L&D and supporting their team members. And, if you want to study or learn anything, and you can justify it to the business and put a big, a strong business case forward, you normally won't have any issues getting support or funding to do that. Obviously, it's a key, and I think it's a key piece for us moving forward, is to have that level of leadership support, even with at the leadership level. Again, it starts with the relationships. And I think we've got to invest a fair bit of time just building those relationships before we try to, instigate too much more large scale change. And then just honing in on that organizational strategy. I feel like we do quite a good job with that as well at the moment, but I think there's always areas for improvement. And just what I'd probably note with all of these things is, and I speak to this a lot with different directors and senior executives, and even at team level, let's just focus on the fundamentals, i.e., if we're doing agile planning, let's make sure we make, we make the roadmaps, make sure that we do the appropriate prioritization. Let's do we've got all our frameworks for our and our models for t-shirt sizing. Let's just follow them. We don't have to make it any more complicated than that. And then we move forward. This is just a little bit more of a granular dive into what we're focusing on moving forward. So engagement and collaboration, leadership influence, roles within the community, and mentoring. We have a huge suite of, and a really diverse range of people, cultures, experience, years being employed at the ATO, years being employed in general. And we're looking at, trying to create more mentor roles where we can have the graduates or newer people to the ATO get mentored by some of the more senior people that have been there and working in that org for a while. We're focusing on some role clarity as well, and standardizing the Agile technology, which we spoke about on the previous slide. There's been a big shift between for workspace design. So we're actually in the process of organizing most of the sites to be hot desking, and then we're co-locating teams or the departments where it makes sense into tribes, and with that to have set days that we come in and we're all on site together. And again, just the single source of truth for our Agile resources. There's been some really big migrations between SharePoint and some other things, and now we're really starting to go back to that single source of truth and bring all those resources into the one spot.
Descale.
Descale. Yep. Does someone have a question?
I was going to ask a question because the leadership pops up from time to time across the slides, and I did have a question as to because you've got do all 13 trains PI plan at the same time, or are they doing it at different times because of the different branches? And if that's the case, is there a portfolio level in place for leadership decisioning on the flow of portfolio and impediment removal and things like that?
It's another good question. Thanks, Jason. It's interesting. So there is a portfolio level in place across those trains, but I think there's still some work to be done there. There has been change of leadership and commissioners and those larger bodies of work, and new trains have had to be spooled up, and so I think at that level to get the most out of it, we need to spend a bit of time just going back to the fundamentals of why we have those program level events and that solution.
Yep. There's another question here.
Yep. Go for it, P.
Yeah. So regarding the single source of agile resource, right? So what if you mentioned it's a very big theme, right? So if there is some kind of new for example, any application or any field, for example, like fixed version, right? Very simple thing in agile. If a new field is recognized by the team that can be used for reporting, for example, how is that communicated throughout the different teams? So different teams can come up with different ways of reporting, for example, how is that communicated throughout?
Yep. So at the moment, it's really a department and branch at a time, or a function at a time, is focuses on their way of working, and then Agile HQ has a site where a majority of the resources are located. But in saying that, I've only got to jump on some of the file management systems and write Agile or write estimation or prioritization, and then there's a number of different frameworks and things that come up. So I think part of that descaling is to actually clean all of that out and then bring it all to maybe SharePoint, and just have it on a really easy, simple site where anyone can from any branch or department can go and access it, and they're all getting the same information.
Yeah. So it can be possible, right? For some of the team, it might be very easy. That process might be very easy, but for the other team, it might not be easy. So do you review those steps, or standardize it and then circulate throughout?
So that's probably mainly done. We have a number of community of practices and run lean coffees and things like that. So the certain subject matter experts from the different areas get together and talk about those things. In regards to Agile HQ, we get pulled into most of those conversations, but it's more from that advisory standpoint, where the teams and departments have made come up with something that makes sense to them, and we've really supported that freedom for them to choose that way of working. But moving forward, to have that single source of truth is to maybe descale the amount of difference that there is out there and start to bring it more into that single focal point.
Understand. Sorry, one last question. It was on the previous slide number 9.
Yep.
You mentioned about the team size. Might
have been on this slide, actually.
No, I'm not sure which one, but however, the question was more of the team size and the capabilities that they have. So I work for a very I work for a startup. It's a very small team. So for example, this one. So people capability. So I have a small team, like around seven-ish. So I have different projects, and it's a shared resource. So do you, because it's a scale, do you have separate team members for each of the teams, or is it like you're sharing the resources between different teams?
Yep. Because it's, the value streams are being created on, following function. There's some cross-functional teams, but there's still a lot of not super cross-functional teams where they're able to deliver end-to-end value. In federal government, it can be hard as well because of the way that the funding flows, and there's so many stage gates and things and processes and policies that you need to go through to get funding and reporting, that just by very nature at the moment, we might even, in some areas, I think we have cross-functional teams, but their remit of the work that they are doing is in a certain part of development or certain part of, focused on functional testing or something like that. And they aren't really privy to the design and side of things. But I have this vision in the future that, potentially we can get there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Cool. Thanks, Kyle.
You're welcome.
I have a couple of questions, Kyle, if that's all right.
Yep.
They're on culture and leadership.
Sorry, back on that slide.
It's all right. So they're linked, but they're also separate. So on the culture side of it, and we all know what a mammoth kind of undertaking and thing that is. So from your perspective on that journey, what is the shift in culture that you have seen or you wanted to see, and what has been done in terms of making that happen?
I've only been at the ATO for maybe 5 months or something like that.
Sorry. I missed the first part of the session. That's fine.
That's right. So my insight into that is probably quite limited. What I can say, though, I feel that the Australian Tax Office has genuinely nailed their culture pretty well when we think about inclusivity, diversity, fairness, well-being, all those sorts of things.
Yeah.
It's a really supportive, enjoyable culture. And I feel like this agile, transformation that's been happening for a while has been integrating into an org, into a organization wide way of working. But it might be another number of years to get it across 22,500 people. But I feel a key point to this is to work closely with HR, with learning and development, and the other key functions of the org. And I think that's probably one thing that hasn't happened a huge amount at the moment. But I think, getting those other, teams of people on board will certainly help.
Yeah, it's interesting because it either happens as a byproduct of something else, or there is a deliberate initiative, if for lack of better words, to go, right, we're going to try and affect a change or a shift in culture. And this is the approach by which we're going to do it. And this was going to lead me to the second question. What have you noticed that they have done in terms of leadership? I saw something around training and education around ways of working and stuff like that. But in terms of, say, if we say, right, agility is all about, the world is changing, it's spinning faster, more uncertainty, more unpredictable, you're going to need to lead in a different way. Has anything been done in this space to support leadership in terms of?
Yeah. So probably some of the, the key points there. Typically, what we had seen is there, were a number of leaders who have been in the leadership positions. We're talking for 10 plus years. And though I guess have had their way of doing things, we're now seeing a younger generation of leaders come in. So I think there's an organic change that's happening anyway. And this younger generation are more adept and understand Agile because they've grown up and they've seen the Agile terminology thrown around. But there are things like the PPMG, the leaders are having their own community of practices. There's been big initiatives with learning and development around facilitating and training up and coming leaders. So there's huge amounts of that, going on. And when I attend some of those training events, we've got multiples of hundreds of, 2 or 3 hundred people, a day sitting on these, 2 to 4 hour trainings around leadership, which I think is a really good sign.
But no kind of coaching per se, it's all training and.
Yeah, I've only been there for 4 months. I'm sure there probably has been, but not that I've specifically had an involvement with yet. Other than what Agile HQ and our team have worked with the leaders within our program of work.
Yeah.
Outside of that, I haven't. We've got that much, so much in the backlog that
For
even
sure.
think it outside of the 2,500 people at the moment that's a dream.
I only say this because in my experience, we did a retrospective with an organization I used to work with maybe 5 years ago, and we look at all the programs, which one succeeded the most, and what the common thread was is leadership going on a journey.
Interesting.
And from a perspective of not in a way that we think that I don't subscribe to the idea that we're all great and then we become leaders or managers and we turn evil. We all have different pressures. That's what it seems to be on LinkedIn anyway, that managers are evil and the rest of us are angels. It's more along the lines of people are asked to lead very differently. I give an example, an investment bank that I was working with just before coming to Australia. And what we did really well was to design a leadership development program for all. They used the tribe model. For sort of the tribe leadership at tribe leadership level, there was a deliberate program that we developed for them. And it was group coaching, but also one-to-one kind of coaching over a period of 6 months.
Yep.
And you had genuine anxiety from the leaders saying, hey, I used to manage a team of 12 and I could see their work. And now I'm accountable for a tribe of 100 and I have no idea of some of them where they are and what the names are. So you can see, how do I shift my leadership style in a way that supports that? Or people saying, if we are to meet our deadlines, we have to be innovative. There is no other way we meet this milestone if we're not going to be innovative. But I have no idea, how do I increase innovate? What do I do?
Mm-hmm.
So all of those where it's not so much, kind of leaders are doing it wrong, but how do you empower them to be really effective in this environment? And Jason, very happy to do something, next meetup or something to share my learnings on that.
That sounds really cool, actually. And yeah, I think Carl touched on it before as well, which is that whole, it's not just bottom up, it's top down, it's from the sides as well. And it's through, it's through education, it's through experimentation, it's through refinement and retrospect. So yeah, very welcome. We'll touch base, Zach.
Yeah, I find there is a great correlation.
Through the whole thing, right? As it's, when people talk about top down and bottom up, the bit that's missed in the conversation is the connective tissue through the whole middle, right? And that's the point, is that and it's not one dimension of bottom to top. It goes in all directions.
Yeah, and Anthony, absolutely right. I mean, I've seen organizations where one leader of a department has managed to create a culture bubble through a shift in their behavior and mindset. And I kid you not, they were on the 4th floor of this building, I remember, and go in 3 months later and go in, have you moved furniture around? They go, no. Oh, it's the new lighting. No. New plants, no. But it felt different. The vibe was different. You no longer had people hunched like that. People were engaged, people were talking. And it's that correlation between leadership behavior and culture. That's the stronger correlation I personally found. If you want to impact culture, it's not about posters around the business, with slogans and what have you. Is that kind of like
Fleming even wrote something about that in his book Out of the Crisis in 1982. Stop using posters to try and motivate people, actually lead.
Get out from behind the desk.
That's it. Yeah. And Z, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, sure. So I'm just curious in terms of like the sort of like the the blockers and also the dependencies. So how do you manage dependencies, and what do you guys like use? Any sort of like dependency tools, blocker tools like ServiceNow, for example, or what sort of like tools do you guys use within the ATO space?
Yeah, so I think some departments are touching ServiceNow, others we're using TFS and Power BI, which that's a machine in itself.
Yeah, it is.
And
big
then
tool.
I know other departments are using tools like Jira with advanced roadmaps and doing a pretty good job of tracking dependencies and lining up their work there.
Yeah, and are the stakeholders on board with the whole like approval stuff, or do they have any like issues with using these applications?
It's a process. So that example of Mural taking 2.5 years for a virtual whiteboard, which is really not going to have any sensitive data on it. We're only going to use it to run a few workshops and map out a few stories and things like that, but it was still a 2.5 year process.
Yeah, right. Interesting.
So just and one thing I'd probably yeah, I highly agree with what you said, Zach, about flipping the bird with the leaders and getting the leaders on board. Definitely as well. I think if you have a strong purpose, if the org has a strong purpose, clear purpose statement, you understand your vision, you understand your mission, and you find people who have similar values and want to make an impact, and those sorts of things, which sound pretty bread and butter. That goes a long way as well to creating that culture. And I really enjoy and have done it time and time again when we have the strategic objectives and we start breaking that down into those smaller bits of work with the initiatives and things like that. As soon as possible, when I go into a area coaching, I try and make it visual, how even down to the user story level, that rolls up to that higher strategic theme. And then the value that person is creating and the impact that person is creating by working on that one user story. And a great exercise for leaders as well, when they're sitting there and they can see the body of the work that they're helping guide, how that leads back up to those themes and impacts. Anyone who is there to enjoy what they do and do something meaningful normally finds a whole lot of value in that. And just the other thing on the leadership side of things, metrics. As soon as possible, whenever I get into an area or even in a team, what metrics can we get? Because they start to speak volumes to the teams, to the leaders. If I start putting metrics in their eyes and it's decreasing or it's increasing, quite quickly we can start to have those crucial conversations.
And Carl, that's aligned with that wonderful sentence from Martha Darby, which was, nobody changes because somebody had a bright idea. People change to save something they value.
Mm.
So whenever you try and, what is it that people care about? Like you were saying, the analogy about the bully, or the analogy is, what do people care about? And your leaders, what is it that they care about? They're not going to change because you had a wonderful idea.
Tell the story.
Mm.
Yeah.
Excellent. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much, Kyle.
You're welcome.
That's fantastic. And it's been a very engaging session. I really appreciate all the questions, and there's been some really good topics of discussion and building on top of the stuff that Kyle's been talking about as well. So a lot of value add. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Excellent. Well, before we exit, I just wanted to it'd be a shame not to take this opportunity to promote a couple of things, but they are community-based things, not necessarily like selling anything. It's that the Agile Agility at Scale community and the Adelaide Agile community have been collaborating on a couple of initiatives, one of which was the topic of discussion at a recent meetup, which is this Mentor Beacon, which is a mentoring program that we've put together between Alexei Klemenchuk, who's not here today, unfortunately. I think he's a bit under the weather, but there's a mentoring program here where we've been looking to match mentors with mentorees, and you can find a lot of information on the Scrumcraft website in regards to what the program is all about, how to get involved, what are the benefits of the program, and see who's actually registered as mentors already. And if you'd like to be a mentor or a mentor or a mentee, then there is an enrollment form here for that as well. So it is free. There's no cost involved. I just thought I'd let you guys know that it's an option that's available for you that you may wish to take advantage of. The other thing that I wanted to just raise before we close as well is that Francesco, my apologies, Francesco Vassallo and I have been collaborating on a open space, like an Agile Coach camp, but we've been very conscious about the fact that we want to be focused more on deep diving on cultural aspect and the cultural influence on coaching an organization and getting greater efficiencies out of organizations. So just like an Agile Coach camp, but we didn't want to sort of, what we found in the past is that an Agile Coach camp, if you say that it's a coach camp, then you're going to attract coaches. We wanted to broaden this out a little bit. We want business leaders. We want all sorts of different roles to be involved in this. As Agile Coach camps go, we tend to limit the size to about 50. It is in person at Torrens University. This one does cost, but it's going straight back to the community. There should be a net, and if there's not, it will go back to the Adelaide Agile community to be able to promote, to be able to provide some fund things like food at an event or drinks at an event or something like that. All right, so a couple of things there. You can find it on the Scrumcraft website. If you go there, you can either have a look at the Mentor Beacon program or Culture Club. We always had a bit of tongue-in-cheek when we called it Culture Club. We always thought it would make people think of something else. But that's the type of humour that we go for. So, all right. Well, thanks for that. Feel free, guys, to connect with each other through the Meetup app or on LinkedIn or whatever. You've all seen who's here in the room. I wanted to thank Kyle once again. Fantastic talk and fantastic engagement in this session. And we'll make the video available if you wanted to share it with friends or look back over something and always reach out to, I'm sure Kyle would put up his hand and say, yeah, reach out and ask any more questions that you might have.
Yep. Always feel free to reach out, guys. LinkedIn, email, phone call, whatever. Always happy to froth out on Agile stuff anytime, 24/7.
Perfect. Awesome. Thanks,
all the best, guys. Have a great night.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Jason.
Thanks, man. Awesome session.
Thanks all. Thank you.